Oh, hey there. So, I know it's been a while since my last video, this awesome Mega Man 2 video right here that you should definitely go watch after this one. But I had a lot more going on at the beginning of the year than I initially anticipated back when I made my Goals for 2024 channel update video. I'll spare you the details because you're not here for that, you're here for video games! But for those of you who are curious, the information is out there on my Patreon. That being said, it got me thinking about what to do with my time and just how little free time I actually have. We've all got life responsibilities, which for better or for worse, eats into our free time. And if you're anything like me, which again, you're here watching a video game themed channel on YouTube, so that tells me you kinda are, that means you like to play video games in your free time. Quite a while back, I was browsing Twitter when I stumbled across a tweet showcasing that somebody had remade The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening for the PC, aptly named The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX HD. Some of the highlights for it were no screen transitions, widescreen support, high resolution. It could be played in 60, 90, or even 120 FPS. And one of the biggest draws? The ability to zoom the map all the way out. That's right, while standing in Mabe Village, you could scroll the map all the way out to see the entirety of Koholint Island. The reception of this fan remake was mixed, of course, with some people praising it and other people tagging Nintendo directly, hoping to get it DMCA'd. You know, just your totally normal Twitter behavior. As for me though, the moment I saw the lack of screen scroll and the ability to zoom the map all the way out, I was struck with the same lackluster feelings I had back when I played The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake on the Switch. To me, this sort of change not only makes the game look worse, I mean, what's going on with this water over here? But it also hampers the imagination. When I was a kid and exploring the island, I'd often look at the boundaries of the map and wonder what was over there. I always had this feeling that there was something more to discover, more to see, and it was just out of reach. My imagination filled in the void, and it made Koholint feel so much larger than it actually was. My issue with the Switch version of the game, and in turn, this fan remake of the game, is that they completely missed that point. By showing us everything, they've essentially removed all sense of wonderment and imagination from the game. It's harder to get immersed in the fantasy when you can see the man behind the curtain. This isn't just a Link's Awakening issue. So many games have gone open world now, which means that while the roamable area has been vastly expanded, by doing so, they've made things feel less realistic. Using Zelda as an example again, when you compare the gigantic forests and trees shown in Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, and hell, even Ocarina of Time, to say Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you realize how small the scale of everything really is in those later games. No longer are the trees stretching far above the ground into the sky, but instead are relegated to being about 2 links tall and roughly the width of him as well. Pokemon similarly went through the same changes, shifting away from these tiled maps where your imagination plays a vital role in making the world feel complete into this large, empty wasteland. Each route in earlier Pokemon games were relatively linear, but often having branching paths, some even including secret areas should you have the proper ability to traverse them. It made exploration fun, because you were often doubling back to make sure you went down every path, looking for items or a new patch of tall grass to find some elusive monsters. When I'm talking about the importance of limitations in video games, it goes far beyond just how the map is made. When Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince was announced, I was absolutely stoked, because I love me some Dragon Quest monsters. I've played all of the US releases, including the Joker series, and I really enjoyed my time with them. When the game came out, I dove into it with the expectation that it was going to play like the earlier titles. I was so pumped. And then I played it, and well, it's okay. It's actually the first game in the series that I didn't complete. Now I'm gonna give you all a quick crash course on the DQM series for those of you who haven't played it, so I can better explain my issues with the Dark Prince. This might come off as an unhinged tangent, but I promise you it'll all make sense soon. In the original Dragon Quest Monsters on the Game Boy, you played as a child named Terry. You're taken to the Kingdom of Great Tree, which, like the name might tell you, is housed inside of a very large tree. You start off with a single slime as your monster, and you're tasked with gathering more monsters to build up a team to win the Starry Night tournament. Great Tree acts like a central hub that you return to when you're not off in the world exploring and hunting for more monsters. As you make progress through the game, the tree grows and expands, changing over time and unlocking new areas. Alongside this, As you make your way through the tournament, you also gain access to new areas that way as well. Eventually, towards the bottom of the tree, you'll unlock the game's breeding mechanic. The way breeding worked in the first game is that you'd pick a male and female monster to breed, which would result in an egg. You'd actually lose those parent monsters permanently though. There was definitely a bit of risk-reward involved here. Unless you used a guide or spoke to NPCs who gave breeding hints, you'd often have no clue what you were getting. There was a lot of experimentation involved. The offspring would inherit some of the parent's skills as well as stats. You could breed the same monster over and over and over again with stats and skills carrying over to the point where you could make even a simple slime incredibly powerful if you took the time to do so. To me, this was a perfect system, and the second game played very much the same way. Years down the line, we would eventually get the Dragon Quest Monsters Joker series on the DS. These games were similar, but instead of breeding monsters, you synthesized them. Monsters were now categorized into ranks. F was the lowest rank you could get, and this was saved for the earlier monsters such as slimes and drakis. What that meant is that at a certain point, a slime would eventually stop being viable, as it had much harsher stat caps than, say, a B rank monster. I didn't hate this system, but I did dislike that it made it so you couldn't exactly turn your favorite early game monsters into a good late game team. But it still worked fine. Another difference here was that you could now see what you were about to make before you made it. Now let's fast forward a couple of decades to the Dark Prince. I knew very little about this game going into it, except that it did not have the Joker tagline, and it was being touted as Dragon Quest Monsters 3, even though there technically already was a Dragon Quest Monsters 3 called Caravan Hearts that we never got here in the West, but I digress. I was super curious how the breeding system would be, and well, it's synthesis, but worse, somehow. In the Dark Prince, you have two options, synthesis and reverse search. Synthesis is as close to a classic breeding system as you can get. You select one monster, then select another. Now you can select from a list of the results. That's right, you can now choose from one monster to make from a list of multiple, completely destroying the what's it gonna be feeling of the original games. You now have options, and a lot of them. But wait, it gets worse. If you choose to instead pick reverse search, the game will scan through every monster you have and then show you the results of every single monster you could possibly make from every single combination of monster in your possession, completely and utterly ruining the magic. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, just don't use the reverse search then. But ultimately, players shouldn't have to force handicaps onto themselves just because the developers didn't realize that sometimes less is more. That, and regardless, using the synthesis system is nearly just as bad because of how many choices pop up. Not only that, but regardless of which option you choose, the monsters are categorized from highest rank to lowest, showing you the best possible combinations you can make. Why wouldn't you just always choose to make the best monster? At the very least, I think they could have alleviated this ever so slightly by just showing the silhouette of the monster and not showing what rank it was, therefore giving the player some semblance of mystery. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. I played the Dark Prince for a good while, making steady progress, but unfortunately, having so many choices just kind of killed the experience for me. The mystery was gone and the game started to feel hollow. Pokemon has a similar issue, with there just being way too many choices of monsters, especially early on. The way the original games were designed was that for the most part, earlier parts of the game had Pokemon whose stats were relative to the challenge presented in that area. This wasn't always the case, but for the most part, the variety of wild Pokemon was pretty balanced. Things started getting a little out of control in the later games, and by the time we reached Sword and Shield's wild area, or hell, the entire world of Scarlet and Violet, things were radically unbalanced due to the nature of the game. They encourage exploration, but the games were not balanced for exploration, meaning you could accidentally stumble upon a higher level or even fully evolved Pokemon out in the wild. And if you're like me, wondering if you can catch it, only to find out that you easily can, then you've already broken the game by being able to steamroll whatever challenge you're supposed to be facing at your current level. And again, I do recognize that to a degree, it's on me, because nobody was forcing me to catch high-ranking Pokemon. But at the same time, the game was encouraging me to explore, which resulted in this situation. I think what's so interesting about this to me is realizing how much my interests have changed over the years. A prime example of this would be Minecraft. Yes, I once played Minecraft many years ago, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I first discovered Minecraft when it was in its in-dev stage all the way back in 2009. Back when this was still just a little side project that Notch had made and not the most sold video game of all time. But back then, the game was very different. You could generate a world and choose to make the map small, medium, or huge. There were also 3 different biomes you could pick, being normal, sky, and hell. The normal biome is exactly what you'd expect, an outdoor setting in a lush green environment. Hell was the opposite, with water being replaced by lava and the sky being a dark red as opposed to blue. This was like the hard mode of the game at the time. Lastly, and my personal favorite, was sky. This was a mixed bag, as it usually consisted of 2 or 3 islands floating in the sky. Depending on their arrangement and where you spawned though, you might never be able to reach some of them. For instance, sometimes you'd spawn on a floating island directly above another floating island with no way to get down because ladders didn't exist yet and you couldn't survive the jump. Regardless though, I love this mode. One of the biggest differences in this stage of development was that the maps were not infinite. There were invisible walls in place, so you could only go so far. You had a limited space to work in depending on the size of the map you decided to generate. Then came the InfDev stage, or Infinite Development stage, where Minecraft made the jump into the infinite procedural generated stages that it's known for today. At the time, I thought this was incredible. I used to host a server for myself and my 2 roommates at the time on an old Dell running Windows XP, and we'd often crash the server by doing something as taxing as exploring too far. But all in all, it was a really great time. In this stage, Notch used to do these weekly updates, hinting at things that we could expect in the future. For a while, the content drip was endless, and I looked forward to every new update we got. But it didn't take long for it to quickly become overwhelming. I stopped playing Minecraft around the time of the Nether, which came out with the Halloween update pack in 2010. As more and more updates were released, I found myself just falling behind until I eventually just fell out of Minecraft altogether for the other games coming out at the time. And as the years went on, Minecraft slowly became something I barely even recognize as the game I originally fell in love with when I first discovered it. I know I can't really hold a conversation with someone about Minecraft who plays it today, because to be honest, I just don't know anything about the game anymore. There have been so many updates, so many new blocks, there's just so much more to do. And I don't know if I could ever jump back in, because I feel like my brain would just shut down. But it doesn't mean I don't miss the old Minecraft, the simple Minecraft, before the infinitely generated maps, back when it had limitations. To be clear, I'm not trying to say this was better than Minecraft is today, just that I personally prefer it. I do recognize how amazing Minecraft has become, but to me, it just became too much. And I think therein lies the root of the issue. Games, or well, series as a whole now, have grown so much, always striving to outdo their previous iterations, to the point where it's hard to trace the line from where a game started to where a game ended up. Imagination is no longer allowed to fill in the gaps, because games have to show us everything, removing any semblance of mystery or intrigue. Bigger doesn't always mean better, and limitations are important. When you have too many choices, it can become overwhelming, leading you to go to the obvious choice, which defeats the purpose of having so many choices. So how do you feel? Do you prefer how things are nowadays, where things are getting bigger with each iteration? Or do you long for the days where things were a bit more streamlined? Let me know. And speaking of the importance of limitations, I should probably end this video. Hey everybody, so I know I normally don't do this like end of video unscripted whatever this is, so apologies for stuttering or messing my words up, see already. But I just want to say thank you all so much for continuing to watch these videos and leave the comments that you guys have left. I know I kind of just went radio silent there for a while, ever since March. And again, I don't need to get into it here, it doesn't really matter. But you know, I had people reaching out to me just in various ways on Patreon or Discord or wherever, and reaching out to Sam. And just to clarify, we're great. Everything's fine and fantastic. But it meant a lot to us that people were like, "Hey, what's going on? You know, did you disappear? What happened?" And you know, it just means a lot that you know I can just come back and make these videos, which I want to do. I know that I had these goals for this year, and yeah, I still would love to meet my like 10K goal or whatever. And if I don't, whatever. There's always next year. There's a million years. Because I'm gonna live to be a million. That I can reach that goal. So that doesn't really matter. I more or less just kind of felt bad. It was like, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then I just completely disappeared. And I kind of felt bad about it. But, you know, like I said, life happens. Everybody, you know, things happen. So it just, needless to say, means a lot that everybody stuck around. And I read the comments. I reply to the comments as much as I have been able to. And it just means the world to me that you guys are still, people are still finding the channel, and that's amazing to me, and I love that. I just wanted to say, genuinely, thank you guys so much for reaching out. I'm happy to be back and to be making more content again, and I want to continue doing it. I'm not gonna like say anything crazy on what's next, because I feel like every time I do that, I just put my foot in my mouth, and then like all hell breaks loose. And so let's just, you know, get back to what I was doing before, where I just had ideas and made some videos and didn't plan things out that well and just see what happens. So again, you know, thank you all so much for continuing to watch my videos, for supporting me on Patreon, for reaching out. It really has meant a lot. So again, thank you. That's all I want to say. You know, that's it. Okay. Bye for real.